Here is my encounter with Barry James. I joined Zoosk on September 22nd of 2019. My profile stated that I was recently a widowed woman looking for a long-term relationship with a monogamous man. I included in my profile that I was self-employed and financially stable. In hindsight, I don't think I could have stuck out more for a scammer than if I had planted a sticker on my forehead that said, "Pick me, pick me." I stated that I was ready for a new, long-term relationship and that I like to try and experience new things. It had just been 1 month, and I had made a couple of friends on this website. But after having talked with them at length, I knew that I was not ready to quit looking for Mr. Right. About October 20th, I logged into my Zoosk account. There, I noticed that I had a contact from a man that I had sent a smiley face sticker to a couple of days before and said that he appeared to be a quality guy and that I wanted to know more about him. I told him that I wanted to meet someone honest and trustworthy and that had a great fun sense of humor. Oh, and that they were kind to animals. When he told me about himself and what he was looking for, I thought, oh my gosh, it was like I had found the male version of me. I contacted him again, and he was immediately responded and told me how beautiful I was. Well, what woman doesn't want to hear that? He said to me that his membership had been a disappointment to him because most of the other women that he had contacted him were only wanting a one-night stand and he was looking for more. Now, I was not totally ignorant about scammers, such as having the Grammarly app available to check plagiarism and how scammers will copy things off the internet word for word and write beautiful letters and poems to women they contact. I thought, he must be the real deal. This man wrote a full 2-page love letter to me, and it was only 1% plagiarized. This was one of the best love letters I've ever received. He mentioned how he was not only captivated by my outer beauty, but also because I was a God-fearing woman, and that he was a God-fearing man. We conversed back and forth via email for the next 2 or more weeks, and with every letter that he wrote, I immediately used Grammarly to make sure that it was original content and not something he took off the internet. Another thing that I needed to do to make sure that this was a quality man I wanted to be talking to, I did a reverse search on an app called Social Catfish. A bit pricey, but worth every penny. I used it to do a reverse search of his image, and it was just a matter of formality to take away the tiny little gut feeling that had poked its head up now and then, reminding me that this might be a scammer. To my surprise, his picture was a fraud. I was furious, and I called him out on it. He said that he was so sorry that he had not set up the Zoosk account, that his son had done it for him, and he had no idea why he had used a picture of one of his very good friends. The image was of a pastor of a church in Guatemala that had lived here in the U.S. He said he would send his real picture and also a copy of his Oregon driver's license that I had requested to be sent right over to me as an attachment, because now, filled with doubt about who he was, I wanted something to show me that I was wrong. He did send them, and honored my request immediately, and for the time being, my fears were calmed down a bit. After just a couple more days, he told me that he had to make an emergency trip to China to get some finishing supplies for a project that he started prior to our meeting. He told me that he would only be 4 or 5 days at the most. He had wanted to meet me immediately before the trip to China, but I told him that I would not be able to meet him until I was through with some things for work, but that I could meet him within 2 weeks. I asked him where he wanted to meet, and he said it was my choice. He wanted me to be comfortable, and that the cost was no object, that he was going to pay for it. He also told me how very much he was in love with me, and that I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. That as soon as I could, he wanted to go house shopping with me to pick out a house, and that he and I would live happily ever after. He said he was going to take care of me. Now there's a red flag. I knew that, but it was still intoxicating to hear. It's just not as reasonable to think that someone is going to fall that much in love quickly, let alone someone that they've never met in person. It was absurd, yet it was thrilling at the same time. Difficult to explain, yet I am sure there are those out there that can relate to exactly what I'm talking about. It was about this time that I started to watch Scamming Scammers Action and realized even more from William and Ann. First, I had no idea about the first and last names that they pick will be two first names. Check, he did that. Also, the town that they chose to be from has an interesting twist that I learned from the site. And I've decided that I wanted another person's point of view after seeing the information that I had. I sent all that I had to Scamming Scammers Action, and William replied saying that he will be asking for money from you very soon. It's a scammer. In the meantime, I just needed to know that he was a fraud through and through, or was he the real thing? Even after being told by someone that has experience in spotting frauds and scammers, I still had to see it for myself. I had heard about a free app called Grabify. I downloaded it. The trick was to get him to click on the link I had been telling him about, a cozy little restaurant that we could meet at for the first time. It was a public place, yet quiet enough so that we could hear one another while we talked. He said that he was from Germany. The restaurant was an authentic one, and it had an entire menu of German food, so I decided I would ask him to look at the restaurant, and I would send him the link, and he could tell me if the food sounded like that which he was familiar with, and tell me if he wanted to meet there. The first day I asked him, I didn't want to sound too overly anxious, but I asked him if he had the chance to see the restaurant. He said that he had not, but he would look at it soon. Another day went by and I said, "What do you think of that place I chose for us to meet the very first time? Don't you like it?" He said, "I will check it right now." And he did. Within a few minutes, I got a text from him that said it would be the perfect place to meet. I could hardly type fast enough to get the Grabify site to pull up my account and see if it would tell me where the person was, as it did as I ran the test for myself. My heart was pounding as I scrolled down to the bottom of the page. I knew that if he was the real deal and not a fake, his link would say he's from the USA, or it would say Nigeria. There it was in dark bold print. The person with the IP address that I was talking to was in Nigeria. I wanted to throw up. I wanted to scream, "You liar! What have I ever done to you?" But I held my tongue and waited. I texted back that I just knew he would love it, and that it'll be our place to meet. I decided that it was time to have fun with this scammer. I told him that since I was short on funds, that I needed to borrow money from my friend to go and see my sick sister that I had told him about early on in our conversation about her illness. We had talked about our families from the very start. I told him that I told her that since he had promised to take care of me, and that she did not have to worry, he would pay her as soon as he got into town. I then told him how much I appreciated the fact that he was going to take care of me, and I said she will need money soon too. "When will you be home, sweetheart?" He texted back that yes, he would take care of what I owed her as soon as he got home. Then he said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I am in a bind and all my supplies are being held up for the insurance for shipping them into the container back to the USA. Can you loan me $13,000 for this? I promise to pay you back as soon as I get into town." "I would love to," I told him, "but I have no money." "What are you going to do?" I asked him. He said, "I thought you would have my back. Here I am getting all these supplies that I can get in this contract done to be with you, and you turn me down? It hurts my feelings that you won't help," he whined. A conversation such as the one went back and forth for about an hour. I said to him, "This is so very stressful to me. You told me that I was fragile and that you are right, I am very fragile, and this is just too much for me. I just can't take the fact that you are stuck in China and that I won't be able to see you because of money you are not able to get. And my sister is so sick and dying that I just need to go to sleep so that I'll never wake up and have to deal with this pressure. I'm going to take this full bottle of pills. That way I can just sleep. There now, sweetie, I've taken the whole bottle, and I think that they should be working soon. I gave them to my little dog first to see if they'd work on him. He's gone now, yes. And they're starting to work on me. I'm getting sleepy. Sweet dreams, my love. I so wish we could have met." I then hit the send button. About 15 minutes later, he texted me, "Do you think it was necessary to do something like that?" I didn't answer. Where usually I would answer him immediately. He texted some other things like, "Hello, are you there?" And I've not answered him. It has now been more than 24 hours since he texted me, whereby he had been texting me almost every hour or every 4 hours since we had met. I think that he thinks I'm no longer here. Since I did not give him my real phone number to text me with, but a Google one, I can tell when it's him, and I do not intend to answer. Also, I gave him an email that was not traceable. I hope he's worried about what he thinks he caused me to do, but I doubt it. Anyway, that is how I dealt with my scammer. I did not get a broken heart, and I hope to meet a quality guy someday. Story 2. I first met David Johnson in August of this year. I was on the dating site POF, Plenty of Fish. He sent me a message asking if we could chat as he found my profile interesting. At the time, I'd only been on the site a few weeks, and had either gotten men from places like the Middle East who demanded sex chat, which I wasn't interested in, or I would just get X-rated photos from various perverts, really no one locally, and certainly no one with any hint of decency. So when David sent me a message that wasn't laced with dick pics or perverted sentences of all the things and ways they wanted to do something to me, I was elated to say the least. His message was simple. He asked how I was. He said he found my profile attractive and wanted to have a chat. I instantly messaged him back after taking a glance at his profile. His profile said he lived in Dallas, which was about a 30-minute drive for me from where I live in Texas. Great. A local guy who might want to meet up for coffee and a chat in the future. I told him I would be up for an online chat and for him to tell a little bit about himself to me. He said he was 45 and divorced, and he had a young son who I think he said was 10 or 11. I can't recall now. He said he worked in the trade industry, mostly in the export and import of cars for clients, and he would travel a lot. He said he lived in Dallas but was in Malaysia at the time for a contract. He said his son stayed with his ex-wife when he was out of town, and she lived in California. When I questioned him about his son going from state to state and how does he cope with schooling, etc., he changed the subject on me. He said he wanted to know more about me. I told him the basics. I was divorced after 15 years of marriage. I had a daughter who was 13, and I split custody with her father. She would spend weekends with him and 1 month in the summer with him, but lived with me most of the time. My ex at the time lived about 15 minutes or so away, which was why the whole story of him living in Dallas and him sending his child to California every time he went for a job contract seemed fishy, but I let it go for the time being. He told me he was looking for a life partner, a faithful woman who would be devoted to herself to the relationship and who was God-fearing. My ex-husband cheated on me, so hearing him say that he wanted a faithful woman in a faithful relationship which was surrounded with church and core values, I was very attracted to this. We chatted on POF for a while, and then he asked me if I had WhatsApp, which I did because I used it for contacting family and friends that lived out of state. I added him and we chatted into the night. He asked me about my job, my situation, did I own my own home or rent, some pretty personal questions, but I felt safe talking to him. I tried to video chat, but he said he had a bad connection in Malaysia and would be home soon and we could just meet in a public place for dinner instead, and he would rather meet face to face the first time than on a stupid video chat. I found it a little odd, but then I thought, well, he's old-fashioned, and yes, old-fashioned, church, God-loving man who was scorned by his ex, and he also said that she cheated on him, drank, and used drugs, things that he would never do. So I just chalked it up to him being old-fashioned. He said he would be in Malaysia for a few more weeks on business. He was buying and selling cars to luxury buyers and clients around the world. Wow, he made my job seem very boring. We would speak every night, sometimes into the late night, midnight, or 1 a.m. But I figured Malaysia and Texas has a huge time difference, so I was okay with it. The weeks went on, and we grew closer. He would send me YouTube romantic songs and said it reminded him of me. He sent virtual flowers and poems. He asked for photos of myself, which I gave. He too sent pictures of himself, including one of him in his office in Malaysia, holding up a sign that said he loved me with my name. I was in shock. I thought this is moving so fast, but it also felt good to be appreciated, something my ex-husband took for granted and never did. He even had flowers sent to my house. I was feeling so loved, so wanted. I later found out the photo was faked and the sign was photoshopped into this man's hands, but at the time I didn't know how to look for photos that were photoshopped. Time went on, and he never once asked me for anything. No red flags, no iTunes, no Steam cards, no money. I felt safe with him. He was due to come home in a week, and we planned to meet at a restaurant in Dallas, which he described himself as if he lived there locally. We were sharing All the I love yous, sending hearts like two love-struck kids. I felt like a teenage girl. I woke up to I love you, beautiful, I need you messages. It's crazy. When you don't hear that for so many years, how quickly you can fall for this romance. One night, he called me telling me that there was a problem with his bank account. He said he let his ex-wife use it to take money out to care for their son if she needed money. He told me she had taken all of his money out and wouldn't return his calls. He was worried about his son and thinks his ex-wife went back to drinking and drugs. I asked him if he wanted me to try and call his ex-wife and check on their son. He said yes and gave me a California phone number, which I later found out was a Google Voice number. When I called the number, I heard what sounded like a young boy, or it could have been a woman, screaming in the background. She, or whoever it was, said, "Mom is drunk and has left me alone." I told whoever it was on the phone that I would call the police, and the person said, "No, call my dad." I suspect it was a young woman pretending to be a little boy now, looking back. I called David on WhatsApp and told him what was going on. I told him I would call the police, and he said no. He didn't want to get them involved because he was scared that he would lose custody of his son. He said he needed to fly home right away to go get his son. He said his ex-wife ran off with his entire contents of his bank account. He needed to go to California to get his son. He started to cry on the phone. I urged him to call the police, but he got angry. He said no, again, for fear of losing his son. He asked me if he could borrow $2,000 to book a flight from Malaysia to California to get his son. I told him I could call and book it for him, but he said he needed $1,500 for the flight and $500 to pay for travel expenses, and asked if I could wire the money via Western Union to his business associate, whose wife worked for the airline and can get him on an emergency last-minute flight. I was reluctant at first. That little voice told me, "Don't do it." But I told him I would. He was crying, bawling on the phone about the danger his son was in, and how him and I and my daughter and his son, we could all be a family one day. He would pay me back as soon as he got home to Texas, and how he was going to propose to me when he got home. He persuaded me with his kind words. He didn't even give me time to think, and I just said yes, and went and wired money to the so-called business associate. When I questioned him why he couldn't borrow the money from him or his boss or company, he said he would be looked down upon, and wanted to keep his private family problems between us only and not involve his business associates. So the money was sent, and picked up within minutes of me giving him the MTCN number. He said he would call me when he got to California and thanked me. Then, just like that, he vanished from my WhatsApp. His POF profile was gone and everything ended. I searched for him online on Facebook and found several profiles with the same photos and name, but as I messaged each one, he blocked me. They must have all been him, all 5 profiles on Facebook, and he blocked me on each. I then called the number of the so-called ex-wife, and it went to Google Voice. A week later, I got a text back from someone at that number saying they have no idea and to stop calling. I suspect it was him just playing dumb. I filed a police report, but they said there's nothing that can be done, and the money went to a man in Malaysia. They advised me to stop talking to strangers online and acted like I was the criminal. I was disgusted and disturbed. I realized I'd been scammed, but I was also treated badly by law enforcement. Since then, I've gotten a ton of messages from weird men on POF. My profile is still there. Engineers, doctors, and all sorts of military men. I know they were all fake, and some might even be my original scammer. A hard lesson learned, and I paid a lot of money for someone to tell me I was special. Thank you for letting me share my scammer encounter. And we'd like to thank both these ladies for sharing their encounters. If you'd like to share your encounter with a scammer, you can message us on Facebook under Scamming Scammers Action, and we will narrate your story into a video. And keep in mind, some of the names and locations of these victims has been changed just to kind of hide their identity. But we appreciate all of their stories. Each one has been verified before recording. Thanks again. And again, if you need help, you can find us on Facebook under Scamming Scammers Action. We'll see you next time. Bye.